On the agenda tonight, we're going back to the early 80s. We're going to be taking a look at Benny Mardones, and he's going to be performing Into the Night. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So I might jump into this one about halfway through, so if you guys want to watch it the whole way through without me interrupting it, there's a link in the description below as always. But let's get Benny and the band up on screen and see how they get on.
She's just 16 years old. Leave her alone, they say. Separated by fools who don't know what love is yet. But I want you to know, if I could fly, I'd pick you. But I want you to know, if I could fly, I'd pick you up, I'd take you into the night.
I'm just going to jump in here. This is a really difficult one to interrupt because of the flow of the song, but there are a few things I want to draw your attention to. This is such a great live performance of the original track. If you've listened to the record, it is so accurate, and the fact that we've got all the instrumentation on stage here, we've got two guitars and we've got keys, obviously bass and drums as well, backing vocals, the lead vocal from Benny. And when we're talking about this lead vocal, we talk about just top notch and exactly the same as the record. The thing about Benny's voice is the way that he got so much texture into that voice, and he uses his range really well with the textures, and by the time we get to the end of the song you'll hear certainly the range coming through, but also the dynamic range he has to his voice. And when he starts the song, it's a great example of that, because he starts with that breathy tone which he uses mostly in the verses, and then starts to lean into it a little bit more as we get into the pre-chorus and then chorus. First of all, to mention about the lyrical content and the very first line of the song where Benny sings she was just 16 years old, and this is something that when you see the video, unfortunately Benny was around 34 years of age, and it starts out with him going to obviously this girl's house, and it's her parent who answers the door and tells him to leave her alone. And you could fully understand that from the video. Back in the day, in the very early 80s, the video that they shot was actually before MTV came along. So it meant that a lot of people wouldn't be watching the video when the song's released. As you have now on YouTube, there's always a video that comes with the song that generally people are watching when they first hear the song. But back in the days of the early 80s, everything's on the radio. So people would be listening to this song, especially the teenagers, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and they would definitely connect with this track. I'm sure everybody can remember when they were 16 and 17 and what was going on at that time. You just finished secondary school, we call it here, but probably high school over in the USA. And going back to that video, if you imagine that they cast a 16 or a 17-year-old boy in that video, then I'm sure it would have been a lot better, made more sense. It was just the fact that Benny was so old when they shot that video in relation to the subject of the song. Getting back to this live performance, we've got so much in here from a dynamic perspective, the way that the guitars are played so subtly, and the fact that we've got two guitars means that we get different chord voicings that also interact with the piano. So getting into a bit of a vocal breakdown here and the way that Benny uses air within these verses that I mentioned earlier. Let's have a little listen to the beginning of the song and we'll try and just put to the side the lyrical content in this first line.
She's just 16 years old.
So hear the amount of air that Benny's got in his voice there. It's almost like she's just... There's hardly any chord connection in there. She's just... Rather than she's just and connecting those vocal cords, he's got that really light sound to his voice. And this is just to draw you in, and it's so softly sung that it does do that, because it means that you have to concentrate more on hearing exactly what Benny's saying. And that is the point, to get your audience just to lean forward a little bit to hear that vocal. And it has such a dramatic impact emotionally and with expression in the voice, because it's almost like a whisper. It's something that, I mean, you could say lyrically that you want to keep a secret, but it's almost like somebody whispering something to you. And that's why, I mean, in everyday life, if somebody's whispering, you listen more intently to those words. And that's exactly what's happening with this vocal delivery from Benny. Just to give an example of that change in texture and dynamic range within Benny's voice, we're just going to have a little listen to one line here, that pre-chorus before everything kicks off.
But I want you to know if I could lie.
And just that one line, when Benny sings, and I want you to know, that's quite clean, but then he goes, if I could fly. And he's starting now to lean in to that diaphragm. He gets a little bit of distortion on his voice as well. I call it vocal distortion, but it's that rasp when he just leans into it. He just lets that bleed into the sound. And that's just within one line. So it gives you an idea of the control and the options that he's got with his vocal cords in order to get so many different nuances of expression. This is one of those performances that you could just literally go through phrase by phrase and just marvel at Benny's vocal ability and his control. Just listen to this at the end of the chorus.
Like you've never seen, ever seen.
So there you've got that full range where he gets into like you've never seen, ever seen. And then he takes his foot off the accelerator right at the end there from that ever seen. And he just takes that vocal away from you right at the end to the point where you can almost not hear it. But it's that great dynamic control that Benny has, just hitting you full in the face, but then just taking everything away in a split second. It's such great control. Obviously, very difficult to try and emulate that. Hopefully, you guys get an appreciation of what Benny's doing here, just controlling the airflow with his voice, leaning into the diaphragm when he goes, and pushing into that, ever seen. And even there, taking a little bit off, ever seen, ever seen. And getting really light with it, almost to that point where the vocal cords are going to split apart and almost break, but he's in total control the whole time. So it's just amazing to listen to. You can go through this whole performance and just to look at second by second of vocal and just be really impressed by the level that Benny was at. I'm just going to let the video play on for a few more seconds because I want to point out something else. So we get this dynamic build up into the verse as well, where we're just holding on the F, I believe, and just getting lots of downstrokes in there, gradually building, but then everything drops out because we're back into a verse. But that wasn't what I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention about the backing vocals, because when you hear them come in, they're not going ah and coming straight in with that full voice. They are mirroring exactly what Benny's doing. So he's got that it's a lot of air in the sound. Let's just take it back a little bit and another little listen. Take it back a little bit further. So you almost don't hear that first note, it just fades in, the and it's mostly air, a little bit of head voice in there, but a really cool sound. Because we're now going to be getting back into the verse, you want to take that dynamic down so that we're blending into that verse. We have that little instrumental build up and then we come back down again. But if the backing vocals were off here, it just wouldn't make sense from a dynamic perspective in the context of the whole performance. So this is something that is real attention to detail. Obviously, you need guys behind you who can sing like this, or girls if there are girls in the band as well, but you need vocalists who've got the ability to sing with different textures, as Benny would have done in the studio. So we are going to get back into the performance, as I'm sure you guys can appreciate. This is one of those that could go on all night, but we've covered the vocals. I mean, I could be talking about the vocals all night, but I'll get the guitar out at the end of the video, of the performance, and we'll get into the chords and how to play this if you do have your guitars out. Let's get back into it. And there we have it. Right at the end there as well, you could hear Benny just go into that reinforced falsetto sound. So he's flipping up there, and that mic technique as well to get the fade out of his voice. So everything is spot on in this performance from every perspective when you're talking about the band as well, matching the dynamics of the song. If you haven't heard the original, listen to that after this live performance, because then you'll get an appreciation of how accurate this live performance is and the ability that we've got on stage here from the whole band, but Benny out front there just nailing every single note that he hits on that record. And we're talking about well up there in the male tenor range. Now we're going to be around A4, B4 and C5, so that male tenor high C. Also the D5, I think we have an E flat 5 maybe there with a falsetto at the end. Could be even higher than that, but I'll get the guitar out and I'll just clarify for you guys. So yes, it was an E flat 5, which is 11th fret of your high E string if you got your guitars out. And we've got this. That's the melody that Benny was singing right at the end there. Just talking about range, because where we end up at the end of the song, we've gone over an octave in terms of the vocal range. So let me get the piano up on screen so you guys can at least have a reference point, because when we're talking about the C5, the D5 and the E flat 5 as well, we're up here. When I demonstrated that airy tone that Benny has to his vocal in the verse, we were an octave lower than that. So it means that we had this, which is down on the C4 to the D4. And let me just point that out, the C4 here and the D4, so you can see that stretch of over an octave. So this is why we go on such a journey with Benny's voice, because of his dynamic approach, but also his appreciation of dynamics within his voice and changing the texture of the tones that he can produce. But range-wise, top end of the baritone range here in the verse, and as you can probably guess, we get to the top end of that tenor range. By the time we get to right at the end of the song, he's belting out these A4s and B4s, C5s, so top end, probably countertenor range is what you'd refer to that as, because generally you'll see the tenor range described as going up to A4, but above that, countertenor range getting all the way up to E5, and because we had an E flat 5, we're pretty much at the top end of that as well. So just quickly going through the chords, we're starting on the C minor in the verse, and a little pick on the root note, a little upstroke there as well, into the G minor 7th, down to the F minor 7th, and it sounds like there might be that high E string 3rd fret, which would make it an F minor 9th chord technically. So the other thing that we can hear in there, and if I just play the chorus, actually I'll keep the verse chords because I think it does come in here as well, where we have the C minor up to the G minor 7th, and then into that A flat major 7th sound, which is going to be your first finger now on the G up at the top there, and the thumb is playing this A flat on the low E string. So it does sound like we have that chord shape in there in the verse, but also the chorus, and I can actually see it being played, so I know it's definitely in there on one of the guitars. When we get into the pre-chorus, we have this jump from the F minor 7th to the G minor 7th. It sounds like we go back down to the F minor 7th. But I do see it looks like a C minor 7th in there, one of the guitars. Going back to the G minor 7th. Kind of like that. Again into this A flat major 7th with that first finger high E string on that 3rd fret. I'm just going to roll the video to have a look at just the beginning part of the chorus. Okay, I'm just going to pause it there because if you can see my arrow, I'm over the fretboard here and there's no real movement going on there. So it means that we're getting a simplification of the shapes. When you've got more than one guitar, it means that you can simplify the shapes. The other guy can play the root notes on his guitar if he wants to. The piano is really going to be taking most of your focus here, and also you can see that we've got a couple of pianos set up, or keyboards, so it means that one of them can be a piano sound, the other can be strings, so it's really filling out the sound, and that is really going to take most of your attention as to what the chord is that we're hearing, because obviously you can play 10 notes if you want to with both your hands, whereas on guitar we're pretty much limited to a maximum of 4 and 5 notes. If we're including that bar over the top there as well, then yeah, we are limited. This is why having 2 guitars, you can then split the work up between the 2 players. But getting into this chorus, we're starting on the A flat, and this might be another A flat major 7th start into, this is where the simplification comes in, because we would be moving all the way down to our B flat position. But you can see that there's only 1 fret movement going on here for the whole of this chorus. So we start off on that. I'm going to start off on the major 7th. Bar. G minor. C minor. Down to the bar of what would be the B flat. So those are the positions that we then get back to. You can play that major chord if you want to, just the A flat major chord, rather than throwing in that major 7th. You could even play your standard major 7th here, the A flat major 7th in this position. It's up to you, but if you want to play it really officially to get that G up at the top, that is definitely in there. There is a tiny bit of solo action in there as well, so just to finish off the video, we'll have a quick listen to that. Okay, so there wasn't too much in there. It sounds like when we're in the A flat, when we start, we've got this little fill, that kind of thing, into before, then there's this run up, which was, let me just take it back a little bit. Okay, so we've got that really cool sound of the keys joining the guitar for that lead line, and we've got this, the guitar part, kind of like that. So I have a go at playing that. As I said, this is one of those videos that could go on for years, like most of them actually, because there's so much to point out from these great performances. But thank you guys for requesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep the suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!